Look, I'm not going to give much of an introduction. I'm just going to tell you that the payoff is back. I've had a rough winter into spring, a good winter to spring, a lot of basketball, a lot of other stuff pulling me away from this passion project of mine. And I'm bringing it back with a big name. Chris Knuckles Nilan played 13 years in the NHL. He's been sober for almost a decade. His story is unbelievable. From being a guy who was a long shot to play in the NHL to being one of the biggest and most notable enforcers in the NHL. He's got a podcast now. We talk about that, a very successful podcast. He's back in Montreal where he played for the Canadiens and won a Stanley Cup. He is a special guy, and his message is unbelievable. And I got to turn it over to my convo with Chris Knuckles Nilan. But first, Kevin Souza. I want to get into your story, and we'll start.
Sure.
We'll start in West Roxbury. You grow up, in a neighborhood, kind of like I guess you would say a pocket of Boston.
Yeah.
Irish Catholic family. And what's your upbringing like? Your dad, I guess, was a Green Beret. I've read and listened to a lot of stuff about you. It sounds like he was a great dad.
Yeah, it was awesome. I certainly. He's a hot ass and, certainly a disciplined guy and, right and wrong. There's no fucking in between. It's either right or it's wrong. And a lot of times I was wrong. We butted heads quite a bit. He tried to keep me in line best he could. And I got in trouble. I always bucked the system. And, he would often discipline me with his hands. And that didn't sit well with me. And, but, I put all that shit behind me. I mean, I know I was an angry kid a lot of times, when I screw up, I do something wrong. One thing my father hated is a fucking liar. And that's one thing I'm not. I've taken my shit over the years. And when I'm wrong and I fuck up, I'm eating the shit. I ain't putting it on no one else. Never have, I never will. But it didn't mean that when I told the truth, I always liked the
consequences. Yeah.
And that didn't sit well with me. So I was always the type of kid when I was growing up in the neighborhood, hanging out with my friends. We'd go places, be out. I was the type of guy that I just, I had to take that kind of shit at home. I was never fucking, once I went out that front door, ain't nobody gonna fucking treat me like that. Ain't nobody gonna disrespect me. Cause I felt I got that at home, and so I kind of had this attitude that fucking ain't nobody gonna bother me. And I was very protective of myself and my friends. Family too, but, my father carried that mantle himself,
Well, how about your mom? Like, what kind of mother was she? Like, just like what the family? Like, what was the dynamic like?
Yeah, my mom was awesome. She's no pushover. She was a toughie. She's fiercely protective of her kids. She's kind of in line with what my father was in line with. My mother had to discipline me at times when my father was away or something like that. She didn't put up with no shit either, but, she was loving and caring. She always took care of us. And, if anybody has something to say about her kids, she'll fucking bite their head off.
So you grew up in a tough environment and you become, a tough person. I like how you say when you took it outside, nobody was going to disrespect you. You knew how to stand up for yourself almost inherently. I want to get to the addiction thing because I heard you say something recently, and it was the same thing that happened to me when I was a kid. I went Catholic grade school outside of Philadelphia, St. Thomas Good Counsel. Right now, my drug was I like the speed, alcohol baseline, but speed, and they put me on Adderall and Ritalin, and I can remember going to take it. When I was a kid, and I would take this Ritalin at lunch, right, at school, because they would give it to me before, my mom would, and then I'd get it at lunch. And I can remember feeling like turned on, like, I feel good. I like this feeling, right? And I knew it was because I took that pill. I heard you say that when you broke your leg when you were 5 skiing, and you said you were in the hospital and they gave you, drugs overnight because the doctor couldn't come till the next morning. And you said you remember that feeling, that hospital room. And it didn't mean you ran out and you were on Demerol for the next 20 years, but you remember the way that affected you.
Oh yeah. Like yesterday. And the two things I remember, quite a few. My memory of that night is so vivid. I broke my leg. My father stuck me in the car. First, he yelled at me because he told me to do the pizza pie all the way down, and I went fucking straight down. No safety bindings on the skis, and my toes on my right foot were pointing, past my back. Oh. I mean, I fucking snapped my tibia. And I remember he skied down the hill. He goes, I fucking told you not to go straight down. I'm like, ah. Anyway, he picks me up, puts me in the fucking car. I got a broken leg. He doesn't bring me right to the hospital. He brings me home. And he calls his sister, who's a nurse. And he says, hey, can you come over here? I think Christopher might have broke his leg. So my aunt come over and asked me to stand up. And I can remember trying to stand up, and I was like in tears, crying. And she said, yeah, I think you better take him to the hospital. I think he broke it. So we fucking pile me back in the car, and he takes me to the hospital, St. Elizabeth. And, I remember it was late at night. It's probably around 11:30, and the doctor wasn't there. They had to set it. So I had to stay overnight. And the things I remember, one, I was crying my eyes out because my parents couldn't stay with me. They had to leave. I was going to be there alone. I remember the drugs because, boy, I was in such pain and not only physical pain, emotional pain. And then I remember the next day, there's a former New England Boston Patriot. His name was Carl Garrett, black guy. And he came down the room. One of the nurses must have got him and said, this little fella's having a tough time. And he came down the room and visited me. I remember it like it was yesterday. And he came down, he signed me an autograph. I was so happy, right? And he was so kind and so nice. And I'll never forget that day. And I got to tell you, when I retired from hockey, I did a thing at the State House in Massachusetts. Some of the former athletes that played on all the major sports teams in Boston. And you know who was there? Carl Garrett.
No shit.
And he hadn't been seen years. He fell on tough times, went back down south. They had Carl come back up. And I went up and grabbed him. And I said, Carl Garrett, my name is Chris Nilan. He said, oh, Chris, how are you? And I said, well, listen, Carl, you don't know me from Adam. But I'm going to tell you one thing you did for me that I'll never forget to this day. It was emotional. And I said to him, back in 1963, when you were playing with the Patriots, you were injured. And you were at St. Elizabeth Hospital. And he said, no, don't go any further. And I said, what? No, he said, don't go any further. I remember. I went in and visited a little boy. You're going to tell me that's you? I said, yeah, I'm going to tell you it's me. It was unbelievable. Like, I gave him a hug. I was like, I'm almost in tears talking about it. And, the poor bastard fell on hard times. He had a rough life after football, and kind of felt bad for him. He's as well dressed as he could be, but he's a little rough looking.
Well, that transition's tough, dude. I mean,
what's that?
That transition is not easy, right?
No, it's not. It's not. But it was incredible. So yeah,
that's pretty cool. Yeah. So a couple things.
So I remember the opiates too, but That was the best part of the story.
Yeah, and another thing, Kyle Garrett, that's pretty awesome. So another thing that you've talked about is a day you'll never forget is you grew up in Boston, and the first time you ever skated, there was like a puddle, right? And it iced over, and you were out there just moving your ass, right? Like skating, and you said you'll never forget. It's almost like as intoxicating as the drugs. You know, it was clear like you were in love. You know.
Yeah, my dad. When I look back, and you don't appreciate it then, you don't understand it then, but what he did for us kids, what he did for my siblings and myself. He was a senior in high school when he married my mother. My mother was pregnant with my older sister. Fuck, he had to get to work right away. My grandparents kicked my mother out of the house. Said, see you fucking later. They packed her bag out the door, My father took her, and my grandmother Nilan took her in. And then my father got to work. Like, my father worked his fucking ass off his whole life. And, he had time to take us to the beach in the summer. He'd rent the place for 2 weeks. He'd rent a place up in the mountains in the winter for a week. Like, he worked his fucking ass off, my father. When I think of all the good things he taught us, And listen, I had my tough times with him, but he was as good a fucking dad as a man could have, or a daughter. I'm telling you, he was fiercely loyal, and he was a provider, and he introduced me to so many things in my life that I just probably never would have been able to partake in if not for him. One of them was that pond, that puddle, fucking skating on that puddle up the end of the street. And I'll never forget it. I had these big fucking skates on. Got my brother a pair of skates, my sister Susan a pair, and we were out there bombing around. And I just remember the day like it was yesterday. And I had my cousin, who was pretty good, artist.
Yeah.
I had her paint that scene. It was Rexall Drugs warehouse, and it was in that parking lot, and there was a big depression in it, where it was built kind of on a swamp, and the tar in the parking lot had sunk. And it was a really huge puddle. And my father knew it was up there. And it got cold enough where it froze. And that's the first time I ever skated. And I had my cousin recreate that scene. And I gave it to my father for Christmas one Christmas.
And I know
it wasn't a fucking Picasso, but I got to tell you, it meant a lot, I think, to my dad and my mom.
And I know you're
in the picture. And
your dad passed away not too long ago, right?
Yeah, 2021.
Yeah. And I know your mom is suffering with dementia, right? Same thing. Yeah, my dad had the same thing too. I could relate to a lot of what you said, but I want to ask. I was going to ask you this later, but I'm going to fucking ask you now. When you're, in your sobriety, like, how did your relationship change with your parents? I mean, because you were plenty to be proud of on the ice, as a young man, but when you got sober and your folks were able to see that.
Welcome to One Star Rewind, a new podcast about those dreaded one-star reviews that every business owner hates to receive, but yet every customer loves to read. During this podcast, we will peel back that one-star review to better understand how it happened, when it happened, and what the business owner is doing after receiving that one-star review. This podcast will be about love, hate, and laughter. On One Star Rewind, we will meet with real business owners who will tell their stories and how they do rely on reviews for their business. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or download us at roguemedianetwork.com. Please subscribe, but only rate and review for not a one-star review. Join us each time for a new review and a new story.
Frozen, heroes, Gonna tell you about bros and foes and heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Mike.
And we have a fantastic new podcast to tell you about. Bros, foes, and heroes. It's the two of us looking into the world of comics, breaking down some characters that you may have never heard of, and some that are just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so Zach comes up with a character each time, and I go into it just completely blind. I don't know who this person is or what their abilities are or anything, and basically I guess we kind of go over their origin story and just some of the ridiculous stuff that maybe, especially Golden Age stuff.
Oh, Golden Age stuff is always the best, and we will make sure to highlight all of the shenanigans and just absolute weirdness of everything.
Yeah, that's right. So subscribe today and follow us on Instagram at Bros, Foes, Heroes.
And if you don't, I know where you live. Not really, but please subscribe.
Bros and foes and heroes.
What are we doing here, Rusty? What are we going to do?
Yep, we're doing the King of the Hill rewatch podcast.
King of the Hill rewatch podcast. Yeah, so we're going to go through one episode at a time. Come along for the ride with us.
Come check it out.
And give me a good like Dale Gribble quote to go out on. Wingo.
Yeah, Wingo.
Wingo. All right. Well, join us for the King of the Hill rewatch podcast.
In the heart of Texas, that drinks his brew.
911, what's your emergency?
Do you hear that? It's coming from the house.
It's coming from inside the house? Do you mean? Could it be?
The Poltergeist. New from Rogue Media. Two haunted hotties talking about haunted places. Every episode, we dive deep into the darkest places and give you a bit of history.
We're getting spooky in all the right places.
You've gobbled your last ghoul.
Follow along for the craziest and spookiest stories with Debbie's Dark Tourism. The Stanley Hotel,
Winchester House,
The Alamo,
Hotel Monte Vista,
and more spooky places. Find us at _Poltergals. POLTERGALS.
Look over your shoulder. It's us,
The Poltergals. Wherever you consume the podcast, you can find us there.
How did it change that relationship?
Big, it was a big change. I mean, we always had a good relationship, but, when I was fucked up and drinking and, I knew my father was worried about me. I remember him talking to my good friend Jim Beasley and said, "Hey, what the fuck is wrong with Chris?" And of course, Jimmy's going to protect me, He's all right. He'll be fine, And, that's how friends are because, he knows how my dad was. And, I was just fucking, not living a good life. I just wasn't. I was lost, I was addicted, where I really didn't know a way out. And the deal, if you've had to deal with it, and it's, people don't understand. They, everybody thinks just stop drinking, just stop doing the drugs, just fucking stop, grow the fuck up. People don't have a clue who think like that and don't understand it. And I didn't understand it, quite frankly, and I was wrapped up in it. And, I can legitimize it all I want. I can justify it, taking the drugs because of the pain I was in. The amount of times I took opiates after surgery. And the fact of the matter is, I was prescribed that medication. And once I was addicted, I didn't have a clue what was going on with me, because when I ran out of the pill, I'm like, what the fuck is going on with me? I'm sick. You know, when you're on the opiates, all the good things it gives you is just the exact opposite when you don't have them.
Yeah.
And then you realize when you take them, that all goes away. And it's not like you're getting high. It's like you're getting fucking normal. That's just to get you to an even keel. And I didn't know what the hell was going on with me. And I knew nothing about going to treatment or treatment centers or, you know, I heard of AA when I was a kid. You know, I remember we had a kid, his father was in AA, and we used to tease him, you know.
Yeah.
Your father, he's a drunk, you know. Meanwhile, we're all shit-faced kids smoking weed, and everybody's fucked up on the street corner. We're busting this kid's balls because his father's in AA, like he's an alcoholic, you know. Well, he wasn't an active alcoholic. He was in recovery, but we didn't fucking know. It was stupid, you know, ignorant.
Yeah. So I want to go back to that time where you were growing up and you start to excel at hockey. You're drinking a little bit, but what was that like, that balancing act, like excelling at hockey? I know you talk about that judge, Paul King, right? And he was a huge influence on you.
Judge is huge.
Yeah, I mean, he's a huge part of your story, and it's so interesting. But it's a balancing act, right? Like I would imagine when you start to excel at sports and hockey, you're starting to drink a little too. Was that just one came with the other?
Yeah, one came with the other. I mean, my whole time growing up, you know, it was play hard, you know, work hard, play hard. And, you know, we would go out after hockey all the time, you know, friends, whatever. And then there was one thing I was always committed. Like the friends I hung around on the street corner, not many played hockey with me because I was always playing on different teams. In the early going, yeah, when I was a peewee and a bantam. And then when I started to move up bantam, started playing on all-star teams, Hub City and with the judge, and Steve Curtin, two of my awesome coaches growing up. My dad coached early in West Roxbury youth hockey, and Mr. Fleming, and then Steve Curtin, and then Judge King, and high school. But the early going, we didn't really partake in those activities, you know, as PU, still a little too young. But when we were bantams and midgets, and, you know, it's after games, you know, after practice, sometimes we go out and have a few beers in the parking lot or whatever, wherever we were. And then high school, you know, yeah, I play my high school hockey, but usually after high school games, you know, we didn't go out. It was a Saturday afternoon game, something like that. But I always took the hockey serious. There were times in my teenage years where my friends would be going somewhere. They'd be going out and about, either in town, bars or whatever, or they'd be heading down the Cape or doing something like that. And if I had a hockey game, I wasn't going. You know, I'd never miss the game. I was always committed to my team, whichever team I was on. I remember one time I went down the Cape with my friends, and we went down on a Friday, and I had a game on a Sunday in Hingham, which is south of Boston, about 20 miles, 20 miles. And the Cape is beyond Hingham. And I brought my hockey bag with me and my stick. And I went down with some friends, and then I ended up thumbing back. I left Sunday morning real early, stuck my thumb out with a hockey bag. Fuck, I got a ride in 2 seconds, you know. And somebody dropped me off at the exit, and I made the game. But, you know, yeah, alcohol was always, you know, on the street corner, hanging around my friends, all that stuff. We drank around, you know, was around the house a lot in my home. Was a, you know, basically daily drinking going on in the house. You know, and the whole neighborhood, the kids, when we hung around the corner, that's what we did. We hung around. We on the Friday night, Saturday night, we're going out. Yeah. You know, we want to go out, and that's what we did. But you know, that whole culture of, especially back in the 80s when I, let's say the 70s when I was in college, the whole college scene, it was, drinking and playing hockey, going to bars, college bars. But again, I was pretty good at, I wouldn't drink the night before a game, stuff like that, but after a game, you kidding me? It was time to rip it up.
And you were kind of, I think that's sort of important, an important part of your story, because people saw this dedication and this drive, and obviously your talent and your skill. But you talk about Judge King. I mean, he basically was a vehicle for you getting into the NHL, right? He helped you get into Boston University.
Listen, he got me in college with Fernie Flamin. He's the one who helped me get the scholarship because he knew Fernie, my coach at Northeastern. He set that up for me. And then, he helped me get in prep school the 1 year when I had nowhere to go at my senior year. The judge recommended me to prep school up in Lake Placid, New York. And he wrote the recommendation, and that was a big part of helping me get in. And then off to college. And then when I was in college, the judge was very good friends with two Hall of Famers here in Montreal, Doug Harvey, who was a scout with the Canadiens at the time, and then Dickie Moore, who was also a Hall of Fame left wing. And they went into Sam Pollock, the GM, and said, listen, here's the deal. You got to do us a favor. And the Canadiens, back in those days, the draft, now they only have so many rounds. Back in those days, it went until every team passed. So there were 24 teams, 24 picks, in the first round. Second round, 24 picks. Third round, 24 picks. Fourth round, 24 picks. And then the next round, some teams wouldn't pick. So it'd be down to like 12. Be then down to 8. And the Canadiens kept picking. And, I was chosen in the 17th round. So it's like they just kept going because they figured we'll draft as many players as we can. We'll have, more players to choose from and more players to give an opportunity from. You never know. You might find that diamond in the rough.
Well, you were that diamond in the rough. You were that long shot. And, the judge believed in you, and you got your opportunity with the Canadiens. What was that like when you get drafted? I think it's like 1978, and you kind of get this. You get baptized early, right? I guess you go to Nova Scotia and you play up there as you kind of make your way to the big league club. When was the first time? And you were known as an enforcer. When was kind of the first time that you realized, like, oh, this is going to be a whole nother level here? I'm going to be able to, because you mentioned you grew up, you want to be Bobby Orr, and you do have that skill set, but it's clear where you carved out your role.
I didn't have the Bobby Orr skill set, but every kid in Boston wanted to be Bobby Orr growing up. Anybody who played hockey was like, fucking love Bobby Orr. And I certainly did. He was a guy I just adored. I mean, I adored Bobby Orr. And, I guess really the first time when I went to training camp, I realized it was a whole other level. Going from college, all of a sudden I'm there and I'm around guys that I've seen 4 Stanley Cups won in a row by them. And I'm stepping on the fucking ice with them.
How scary? Was there fear?
Yeah, I don't know if it was fear as much. I was just nervous. I didn't want to embarrass myself. I wanted to do something good. I guess the fear of failure was more than anything. And, I got through training camp and I did okay. I tried to play physical. I might have had a couple points. I didn't score. I think I had a couple of assists. And I'm like, did I do enough? And the last day at camp, they brought us in and said, hey, we're taking pictures for the team, media guide. And you got to come in and take a picture. So there's a picture of me with the afro, that one when I got the mini skirts and maxi skirts and afro hairdo. Well, I had the afro hairdo, and I have a Canadians jersey on. I'm sitting there, and they take my picture. Well, it's the number 12. And that's Evan Conway's number. He's a fucking Hall of Famer. But he retired that year. And they just used that jersey for everybody. Here, throw this on, take a picture. And they kind of pulled the numbers to the side so you couldn't really see them. But I guess you end up seeing them in mine. But anyway, I took that, when I took the picture, I'm there, do I have a fucking chance here? Because there were a couple other guys that were pretty good players that, not everybody got their picture taken. So I'm like, shit, do I have a chance? I don't know. Because I don't know anything. I'm really naive to it all. And the next day, we go on the ice. There's a group going to Nova Scotia, and then the Canadians have their own camp, the big team. So I'm in the group that goes to Nova Scotia, and I'm happy. Because I know I wasn't making the fucking Habs, but I'm happy I'm going to Nova Scotia. And I get sent there, and I had a good friend, became a fast friend, Timmy Burke. He's now he was the assistant GM in San Jose for years. He's still there, head of scouting and stuff. But Timmy, there was a coach there named Bert Templeton. In the previous season, the Voyageurs got their ass kicked. Nova Scotia Voyageurs. They played against Philly's farm team, the Maine Mariners. And they beat them 4 straight. Maine beat Nova Scotia 4 straight. So Montreal said, we got to fucking toughen this team up down in Nova Scotia. We're not going to have a chance in hell. And we got to get tougher. So they drafted some pretty big players. And all out of the Ontario Junior Hockey League, a couple kids from out west, from British Columbia. And we come to training camp, and we're in the room, and Timmy Burke comes up to me. Hey, how you doing, kid? He's from Melrose, Mass., just outside of Boston. And he played at University of New Hampshire, and we're talking. He said, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. He said, let me let you in on a couple of things. Tim was there a couple of years. And he said, this new coach here, you fucking do yourself a favor. Don't be first in line when the drills. Fucking get in the back of the line, watch it, and then do it. And this fucking coach really doesn't like college kids. His name was Bert Templeton. Bert always had really tough junior teams. He coached the World Junior Tournament in Pistony, Russia, for Team Canada when Theo Fleury was on the team, a bunch of them. And wow. It's called the Punch Up in Pistony. They turned the lights out in the stadium. All the Canadian kids started fighting the Russians, started kicking the shit out of them. And then all the Russians in the rink, they turned the lights out. Anyway, that's Bert. I know fucking Bert started that whole thing. And Bert didn't like college kids. And, Timmy said, so those are a couple of things you got to pay attention to. And Tim, I go out to dinner with Timmy. We're living in the hotel at the start. So I remember we get out there, and there was a kid, Richie Costello, who's also another college kid, drafted out of Merrimack College in Massachusetts. And we get out there, and we're in the first practice, and fucking Costello's first in line. And he goes, and he fucks the drill up. And Templeton blows a whistle. He goes, fucking Costello, get over here, you fucking idiot. You college kids are supposed to be smart, aren't you? And you go first and fuck the drill up? Get in the end of the fucking line and watch. Oh, fucking poor Richie. I felt bad for him. And Rich, I think he was a pushover, but he wasn't the toughest kid. And he was melting like there. The guy just fucking embarrassed him. And I remember Berkey bumping me, and he said, see, he fucking hates college kids. So I'm like, this is fucking real good for me. So we used to do this drill in front of the net, and he put me up against this big kid, Alan Luchu, where you both be in front of the net, and there'd be a puck there, and you had to try and hang on to the puck while the defenseman fucking beats on you. So we're battling for the puck in front of the net, and he fucking cross-check me. I turn around, and I fucking chop him, cross-check him. And, you know, we're pushing. So Bert, I think that's the first time he realized I wasn't like
one of those college kids. Yeah.
So and I don't have a contract, mind you. All these other guys do. So we play our first exhibition game. And I get out on the ice, and there's a fucking big French kid named Bam Bam Boulanger. I always tell this story. and Bam Bam been around the league for a while, and he fucking fought everybody. You know, he got a fucking good-sized melon, and he's big. So we get in a shoving match. After the whistle, they break it up, and I get back to the bench. And one of the kids that were drafted, Dave Allison, was a big kid, big defenseman from Ontario. And we get back to the bench, and he leans down, he looks over at me, and he goes, "Hey, fucking college kid. What are you trying to start a fucking brawl? You ever been in a fucking brawl before?" I go, "Hey, fuck you. You don't know what a brawl. You ever been fucking shot at or stabbed, you fucking pussy?" I jumped all over him. Now, Bert's behind the bench, and he fucking loves it, right? I'm fucking giving it right back to him. Next shift, I go on the ice. They throw the fucking Bam Bam out after me. He's going to come after me now. Well, fucking Bam Bam comes after me, and I fucking Bam 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 Bam. And now Bert's probably going, "What the fuck? This kid played college?" And of course, Allison's going, "What the fuck? Why'd I say that to him?" So I don't talk to Allison the rest of fucking training camp. I don't say a fucking word. I ignore him. Don't fucking come near me. And he got the message. Because we're out at bars a couple times with the guys. Fucking stay the fuck away from me. So, and he's a good guy, actually. But I didn't know him at the time, and he fucking challenged me. So we end up... we play I end up signing a 5-game tryout. From that fight, they said, "Okay, we'll give you 5 games at $200 a game." So now I'm happy because I'm getting paid to play, even though it's a minute sum. And the door's open for me. So we play the first 3 games at home in Nova Scotia. I don't play a fucking game. The 4th game of the season, where is it? Maine. Against Philly's farm team. This is the team that embarrassed them the year before. So I get my chance. I'm fucking dressed, and first shift, I get out on the ice, and I fucking run the biggest guy on the other team. And he happened to be the toughest guy on the other team. His name was Glenn Cochran. He played in Philly a bit. And he was like 6'4", fucking arms down to his ankles. And he ended up turning around, slashing me, and I slashed him back. We dropped our gloves, and I fucking let go like 2 quick rights, and away we went. I fucking cut him open and cut him good. He was bleeding like a fucking pig. And then he went nuts and trying to get at me, and I was trying to get at him. We both get kicked out of the game. So my father's at the game. He comes down. He's pissed off that I get kicked out of the game. What the fuck? We come all the way up here to see you play. And well, you know, what do I know? I don't fucking know it's going to go like this. It's the way it went. So the next morning, we went to bed that night. We're going to leave the next day around noon. And the coach called me in the room. He goes, "Hey, Chris, come down here. You got a few minutes. I want to talk to you." And I'm like, fuck. What are they going to send me home? Yeah. I got kicked out of the game. Fucking all worried. And I come down the room. I open the door. I said, "Come on in, sit down." I'm like, "Oh, fuck." He said, "So what's the deal? Who's your agent?" And I said, "I don't have an agent." And he goes, "Well, you better find one because the Canadians want to sign you a contract." So there was a scout from the Canadians there that night watching the game, right? And I think it was Claude Ruel and Ron Caron. And I ended up that next day, I didn't have an agent, but I spoke with the Canadian. They said, well, when you find an agent, you know, get in touch with us. And that I did, found an agent, and I signed a contract like a week later.
And then we're off.
One fight.
And then we're off. Right? I mean,
yeah. And the thing with that, you know, I only played 49 games in the American Hockey League. Back in those days, like Larry Robinson was down there a while. There were some really good players that stayed there 1 or 2 years, 3 years in some cases before they even made it to the NHL. I played 49 games there. I had 15 goals and 10 assists, which I think shocked them as much as the fighting shocked them. And then I got called up, and I never went back.
How did you adjust to life in Montreal? Because now this is royalty. Go ahead.
Well, before we get there, you know, that time in Nova Scotia, you know, that one fight set off like a fucking insane amount of fighting for me. So people wonder, I come in the league, I was just going to be a fighter. That's how I was going to make it. No, like I wanted to make it being a hockey player. But once I had that one fight, I signed a contract, and then everybody else in the league who fulfilled that role wanted to fight me because I beat Cochran. They said, who the fuck is this guy? So every time I came to town, you know, it gets around. Everybody knows who the fighters are. So once I beat Cochran, everybody in the fucking league wanted to fight me.
That's how you end up with 3,000 penalty minutes.
Well, I ended up in 49 games. I had 304 minutes in penalties. That's fucking insanity. I would have ended up with almost 600 in a season if I kept going the way I was going. Anyway.
So you get up to Montreal. Yeah, you get called up. Now, what's it like with the drinking and stuff like that when you get to the NHL? You know, the word culture is the most overused word in the world right now, but drinking is a real part of that hockey lifestyle. Walk us through, you know, because you mentioned you didn't do drugs really when you were in the NHL. I mean, sometimes in the off season.
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
off season here and there.
Yeah,
I dabbled. I hated smoking weed. Even when I was a kid, I tried it. It made me a paranoid. I don't need shit to make me paranoid. I don't need shit to make me interact with people. I never had that problem. I was never intimidated to talk with people or interact. I just wasn't. You know, and when I smoked weed, it fucking freaked me out. So yeah, the drinking, it was always part of the culture in hockey. And then Jesus in the 80s. I mean, just think about it. You know, went from in hockey, you know, the 60s, 50s, and 60s, all those long train rides those guys had to take, killing all that fucking time on a train. What do? You play cards and you drink. Someone might read a book, but most of them are probably fucking drinking. And, you know, that culture grew over the years, and then it started, you know, trains to planes. And then in the 80s, it was just like an accepted thing. It was like a bonding thing. And when I came to Canadians, you know, one thing we had to do every day after practice is we'd come out of the Montreal Forum, walk across the street to there's a big underground mall there, take the escalator down, take a right, and down in the corner was a tavern called Le Cabanier. And we'd have to go there every day for lunch. You didn't have to drink. You had to show up. But if you showed up, chances are you were drinking.
And you were drinking pretty much every day after practice or whatever. Yeah.
You would, you know, and again, say we're playing Thursday night. It was a Wednesday. We'd go to lunch. I'd have a couple beers and go home.
That was a fast lifestyle too, like because you know you mentioned you were going home. Some guys weren't. Like the NHL, you had guys that were just that could do drugs and play. And I remember being in Philadelphia when I was a kid in '85. Pelle Lindbergh died. And that,
I remember the night it happened. Yeah.
And so what is that? You guys are in the NHL. Like that's a guy clearly living in the fast lane who passes away. Is there any like message that sends to you guys, or are you just like No,
it was scary. It just shows you how vulnerable and how fleeting and delicate life can be.
Yeah.
But when I think back of those days, it's like there was a pretty healthy respect on the team, from the sense that we had captains, we had guys that fucking oversaw everything, and if you were out of line, they'd fucking speak up. So night before a game, like I said, we'd have a couple beers that afternoon, and guys would go home, get ready. You wouldn't be out all night drinking. But there were nights, we'd play on a Saturday night. We wouldn't play till, Tuesday. We'd go out Saturday night, fucking whoop it up. Or you had a couple days off. Not the whole team would go out and whoop it up, but some of the younger guys,
What's it like?
So there's a mix.
What's it like to win a Stanley Cup in Montreal?
Oh, it's incredible, and just incredible. You see the freaking crowd behind me there.
Oh my gosh, at the parade. Wow.
No, that's sick. That was like 5.5, 6 miles of that from storefront to storefront, over 1 million people. It was insanity. And it was an experience that I wish I got to do more than once, but I'm grateful I got the one opportunity to do it. It was incredible. Incredible. People, this is a different town when it comes to hockey. It's not a hockey town. It's a Montreal Canadiens town. The difference, they do the World Junior Tournament. They have it out in Ontario, or they have it in Toronto, or they have it in Edmonton or Calgary. People come out and support it. Here they have the World Junior Tournament, and shit, some of the games, they just didn't sell out. People don't, they're like, most of the games they didn't sell out. And that tournament usually sells out no matter where it goes. And the reason being, it's really a fucking Montreal Canadiens town. Not so much a hockey town.
What was it like for you around town? Did you was there almost a sense of, because you seem like a pretty grounded guy. You came from a rough and tumbled, upbringing and family. Was there a sense of entitlement being a Montreal Canadian running around that city?
Yes and no, but I never, I remember being in the line to go to the movie theater, and a guy come on, you can get in. I'm like, no, I don't fucking do that.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to walk in front of all these people, look like a fucking asshole? No, thank you. I'll wait in line.
Yeah. So
you want to bring me a box of popcorn? Go right ahead. Fuck that. I ain't cutting everybody off.
So,
and it's funny, and that comes from my dad.
Yeah.
I remember coming out of the Forum one night. My parents were waiting for me out in the garage, and there were a bunch of people there and kids, and so I'm signing autographs, took a couple pictures, blah blah blah, and then I come over and we're gonna head out the door and jump in the car and go have a bite to eat, and my father said, "Hey, come here for a minute." And then what? He said, "I'm going to tell you right now, I just saw what you did over there. Don't ever stop doing that. Don't ever fucking, have the fucking sourpuss on, and keep your fucking feet grounded. Don't let that shit go to your head like you're some fucking big cheese. Keep your fucking feet on the ground." I'll never forget it. And I think for the most part I did. I've always had time for fucking people. Maybe I wasn't smiling every time, but I always did it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I can say I give the people the time of day, and I'm very open with people and forthcoming. And, that's a credit to my dad. It rubbed off on me, no question.
And so you have this great career, and, as it winds down, I think you were 34 when you retired, or about that age.
Yeah, 34.
There's an acceptance you have around the magic that comes with playing in the NHL, and you say, hey, at some point I had to realize I wasn't going to feel like that about anything else, Well,
you don't know that.
Yeah, but when you get done, you're like, oh shit! Like at some point,
you don't know it till it happens.
Yeah. And so, how do you deal with that adjustment, Chris? Like,
really hard.
Yeah, like
you go from, showing up every day, you're with a group of guys, you're passionate about what you do, you love it. And then all of a sudden they tell you can't do it anymore. You used to hear it, guys say, oh, you're just a piece of meat. I'm like, oh yeah, not me. But you are, you're the fucking racehorse. When you're done, you're done. At least they go and get laid for a while, the racehorse. But, yeah, I was lost. you can prepare as well as you can. You can put money away. You can do this. You can do that. But nothing will ever really prepare you for the shock of the end of it. And then what do I do now? And, some guys, I won't say everybody has a seamless transition, but some guys certainly transition better than others. And some struggle. And I'm one that struggled. I did a few different things. I never found anything that was satisfying or that gratifying to do in my life. And I took a year away from it, and I struggled. I got lost.
When did the alcohol was kind of always there, and you can call that a drug, but for you, and it is a drug. I mean, I'm alcoholic.
Yeah, it all started with that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but then,
I don't drink. I don't drink normal.
Yeah,
when I drink.
And so you're out there. You're not drinking normal. You have more time on your hands, but then I think that the respect you have for the game maybe kind of kept you out of trouble with drugs and opioids, but then it just hits you totally different, right? I mean, how do you develop this appetite for opioids? How do they start to just agree with you and your body to the point where you're like, holy shit, I don't know what happened, but now I'm here?
Well, some of the, surgeries, I had one after another. I remember after every surgery, I would be taking them, and they helped me deal with the pain. And I always equated killing the pain. Like people say, oh, take a Tylenol. A fucking Tylenol? What's a Tylenol going to do?
Yeah.
I always equated with me feeling different. And that told me it was working on the pain. And, after surgery, I'd take them, and then I wouldn't have them. I felt a little off. And then I have surgery again. And next thing I'm taking them, I'm running out. Now I'm looking for more. Calling the doctor, hey, can I get another script? Okay. Then it went from calling doctors to get script to find them on the street to eventually taking so many because of progression of the disease of addiction. Starts with 2 every 4 hours, then it goes to 4 every 4 hours, then fucking 6. And then before you know it, you're chewing 20 or 30 of them a day. And when you look at it, you're going, what the hell is going on? And then, the wonder drug came out, OxyContin. And, I was so addicted to the painkillers, the Percocet, that when OxyContin came out and someone offered it to me and told me about it, that they're saying it wasn't addictive, that there's no aspirin in it or Tylenol, I'm there, shit. I'm taking so many pills a day, and with all that aspirin or all that Tylenol, it can't be good for my system.
Yeah.
So this new drug, OxyContin, at the time, I'm thinking, listen, there's none of that other stuff in there, the Tylenol or aspirin, so it's got to be healthier for me, and it's not addictive. So I'm not. So I started on that, and man, when I started taking that, it was just fucking went to a whole other level.
How hard was it to get the prescriptions?
How hard?
Yeah, back then.
Not really. I could be somewhere and go in and tell a doctor, I'd be in Canada somewhere, even down in Boston, be anywhere, and I, talk about the amount of injuries and surgeries I had. I got arthritis. I could fucking spin a pretty good bullshit story, but I had legit pain, but not taking opiates that are supposed to be prescribed to cancer patients who are dying. Fuck, Yeah, I was in pain, but doctors would fucking prescribing them like they were M&Ms because, they had incentive to do so, and they were also lied to saying that it's non-addictive.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah,
that's our fucking wonderful government. Who fucks us all over.
And that Sackler family and that whole all that stuff. Yeah, that was just like, for me, that was up there. And then was, as a kid, it was Pelly Lindbergh and then Len Bias. You just knew where you were that day.
Yeah. Yeah, fucking crazy. You know. Yeah, I remember. Len Bias going to go to the Celtics, right? Or could have been.
Yeah.
I remember that, and then certainly Pelly. I remember it happened. There was a kid in Boston, Craig McTavish, that maybe a year before that.
Craig McTavish, one of the McTavish brothers, he passed away?
No, Craig McTavish played for the Bruins.
Okay.
He's a college kid, a Canadian kid. He played down in, I think, Lowell.
Okay.
And he made the Bruins. And he ended up being a big part of the Edmonton Oilers. But the Bruins used to have they had the beer in the locker room. When I came to Montreal, they never had any alcohol in the locker room unless you won the Stanley Cup.
Okay.
At home or on the road. They never did. The Bruins used to have a lounge in their thing, and they had a big refrigerator full of beer in there. The guys after practice used to drink. Anyway, and then they'd go across the street to the Fours or whatever, and Craig McTavish was driving home one night after leaving the Garden, and he rear-ended a girl in a car and killed her.
Oh, okay. So he's still alive, but that was just okay.
Yeah, and what happened? I think the leagues, there was some type of suspension, and then Harry Sinden ended up trading him to Edmonton after the suspension was over, so he could get out of town. But actually, Craig McTavish became friends with the family, the parents of that girl. He made amends to them, and they really accepted him. And whenever he came to Boston, he would meet with them and go to dinner. And so that happened, and then the Pelly Lindbergh thing happened, and I think there was a little bit of a change in mentality across the league with the drinking.
Yeah,
it didn't stop, but I think especially in the locker rooms at home, after practice, stuff like that, things change. I think started to change somewhat.
Okay, all right, we're all good here, so I want to get back to you. We talked about it was easy for you to get prescriptions, and then you come up against OxyContin, which is easy to get those too, and then you run into a situation where you accelerate and you end up on heroin. How does that happen?
Well, that happens when it's starting to get tougher to get them, and the thing is, in 2000, I went to treatment, and I got well, and I stayed sober for about 2.5 years, but I was hanging on by the fucking fingertips. I wasn't doing the work. I took fake it till you make it to a whole other level. And, slowly I was drifting away. And I remember one night, and this is not a blame thing. This is just how it happened. But it didn't matter if she was involved or not. But my ex-wife, who is a wonderful woman, doesn't have a mean bone in her body, a good person. We were out for dinner. And she was having a glass of wine, and we were talking. She said, "So you think you're an alcoholic, really?" I said, "Listen, I know I was a drug addict, and I had a real hard time reconciling that I was an alcoholic. I believed I was a drug addict because I knew I was addicted to drugs. Alcohol, I didn't have to get up in the morning and drink. I didn't have to drink to get through the day. Didn't mean I wasn't an alcoholic, though, but I always looked at it like that. Like, did it really cause a whole lot of problems in my life? And when I got honest with myself, I realized it did, but I still hadn't. And I said, you know what? I didn't think I was alcoholic. I just, they convinced me not to drink because it'll bring me back to the other shit. She said, well, I just never thought you were an alcoholic. I'm like, okay. So I had a glass of wine. And I was off fucking running again. And again, it's not a blame thing. It wasn't her fault. I was ready to relapse anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I started drinking again, and then eventually back on the pills. And I ended up going to treatment again. And I went to treatment in Oregon, and then I got out, was doing good for a while, about 8 months, and I relapsed and started snorting that shit. And then eventually came to injecting it. And yeah, it was horrendous because you couldn't get pills by then. It was like 09, 2010. You couldn't get pills like you could before. It was getting difficult. And that was cheaper. It was easier.
Were you living in Boston or Montreal at the time?
I was living in Oregon.
Oh, you were living in Oregon, so you're doing heroin.
I got out of treatment. I stayed there. Jamie and I, and we were fucked up. I went.
That's your girlfriend, right? She's sober.
What's that?
That's Jamie. That's your girlfriend. She's sober too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I credit her to put the stop to all of it, and I ended up. I went back east to make some money in an event back in Toronto, and I had left, and I tried to reach her, and I was calling her, and I'm like, fuck, what happened? Did something happen to her? I couldn't get in touch with her for 2 days. And she had gotten a plane and flew back to Hawaii, where she's from. And she finally picked up 2 days later and said to me, Chris, we're never going to have a chance together. We keep going like this. So I'm going to get well. I want you to get sober.
Because you guys both relapsed together.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, they warned us that would happen, but we said not us.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
But it happened. And I thank God she survived it for sure. And me. But the time, honestly, I thought I was going to lose her. I thought I lost her when I couldn't reach, get in touch with her. I finally did. And she said, so yeah, I'm going to get well. I'm going to focus on myself like they told me to do at the beginning. And I suggest you do the same. So that was around, I think that was around November of 09. And yeah. And I went back to Boston. I never went back. We had an apartment in fucking Oregon, place right in Cannon Beach. I never went back there. I lived in a hotel, and I was fucked up until she kept calling. After she got well, we'd stay in touch here and there. And she said, Chris, you're still doing that shit. You got to get well. And I mean, no, I'm not.
Yeah. Don't you think you're fooling people and stuff?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. And I think it was May, early May. So I went from November, December, January, February, March, April, May. And it was the end of April, beginning of May. And we had been talking. And, she would email me. And then we're on the phone talking. And she said, Chris, you're going to fucking die. And I'm like, I'm fine, I'm fine. And she said, well, here's what I'm going to do, but you got to promise me you don't show up here fucked up. And I'm like, okay. So now I'm thinking she said, I got a guy here who's an addictionologist that Dr. Kevin Kunz, who was really good. He helped me, and I'm going to set you up with him. And I want you to come here and get well. And that's what I did. I flew there, sick as a dog when I got there. I didn't show up fucked up. I was starting to really Jones and was sick when I got off the plane. And I was kind of sick all night, fucking like a dog, sick. And I was meeting him at 9 o'clock in the morning. And I went to see him. I met with him for like a week every morning, and I started going to meetings again. He got me on Suboxone to quell the withdrawal symptoms.
And this is in Hawaii?
Yep.
Okay.
And I stayed there for about, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months, maybe. And I went back home 2 months. And I went back home and kept it going. And and then Jamie and I was moving back up to Montreal to do a radio show. I got an offer in the radio. And I was going to be moving back up here. And it was, 2010, September 2010. Or was it 2011? 2011, sorry. So 2011, I'm going to be moving back up. I'm in the hospital. I was in the hospital for the month of June and July for 2 months. I had a staph infection in my ankle. They almost had to amputate my left foot. I had screws in there from when I played, and I got a staph infection. I don't know if it's from my drug use. Chances are, yes.
Yeah.
And then I'm allergic to penicillin, so they had a hard time getting rid of the infection. And then I had 3 surgeries in 5 days, and I was on IV for 2 months. So August comes around. I'm supposed to be back in Montreal by September.
For hockey, right? For the show.
For the radio job.
Yeah.
At TSN.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to be moving back yet. I wasn't sure exactly when I was going to get the radio job, but I had to move back there first. The plan was to go there in September. Jamie ended up flying to Boston right near the end of August. And we got in the car. I was in a wheelchair and on crutches. And
but you're sober.
I had a borrowed vehicle. I had like $500 cash in my pocket and a hockey bag full of clothes, and off we went. And here we are today.
So when you moved up to Montreal from Boston, you're sober, right? And
yeah.
You know, I know you had like a night in 2015 where you slipped, right?
Yeah.
But around all that, what does Chris Nilan do to stay free from alcohol and drugs? And because dude, you could tell talking to you, you have a total zest for life. You love living. You don't need alcohol and drugs to be this person, right? Living life like a loose shirt. How do you get there? How do you get there every day?
Well, you know, for me, it was, I was going to meetings. I was doing what I was supposed to be doing to stay sober on a daily basis. And as things got good again, I got lazy.
Yeah.
You know, I got lazy. It's a program of action. You have to be involved, and you have to be involved in your own recovery, and no one's going to do it for you. And I got lazy.
Did you stop going to meetings?
What's that?
Did you stop going to meetings?
Yep.
Yeah.
Got lazy. Things are going good. And I went home. My mom had a stroke. I went home and, you know, I was weak. And I made a phone call and I almost ended my life. You know, you think you got one more in you. You think I can do this. And I'll never forget it. My father was upstairs with my mother. I had been there. I made a phone call. I was like freaking out. My mother's going to die, blah, blah, blah. And instead of, you know, stiffening up the backbone, sticking the chin out in the chest, you know, I was fucking weak. And I made that phone call. Kid drove over there to the hospital, and I grabbed the shit. And I was just, I'm just going to snort it. That's all I'm going to do. And I grabbed it and I said, fuck. It was cold, kind of cold out. And I said, I ain't going to, it was December. Actually, December 6th, 2015. And I was going to go jump in my car and do it there. And I said, no, fuck it. I said, it's nice and warm in the hospital. I'll just go in one of the bathrooms there. So I did. I went in the bathroom. I don't remember. I remember I snorted a line. I don't remember anything after that until I woke up in the emergency room. Apparently, I snorted the line and went back into my mother's room, and I sat down. I was gone. And my niece was there, Courtney, and she realized something wrong with me. She ran and got the doctor. They rushed me to the emergency room downstairs, and they hit me with Narcan and brought me back to life. And I guess what's different today, it really scared the shit out of me. And I'm like, what the fuck? How selfish can I be to, end my life like that? Leaving, my father there to deal with my mother, and now I'm dealing with me dead. My kids, my grandkids, Jamie, how fucking selfish. And that really got my attention. Now I'm,
And your sobriety date is December 7th, right? Or is that right?
December 7th. I went to a meeting the next day with my sponsor. Had a long talk, and I got back on the horse again. And, then COVID came, and, Zoom meetings happen. I do a Zoom meeting every day. I do 2 on Monday. I do 2 on Wednesday. I do 2 on Thursday. Tuesday, I go to an in-person meeting. Thursday, I do 1 meeting. And on the weekends, I chill. And, the odd time on a weekend, I'll either go speak at a meeting or.
Yeah. How much of that do you do now? Like speaking and stuff like that? Because you got.
Someone asks me, I do it.
Yeah.
Whenever someone asks me, I don't, it's just people, if they ask you, someone asks me, I do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, there's a message there, there's no question. And it's the thing with everybody. You think you got one more in you. You think you can do it again. You think. It never, ever gets better. You think, I can drink again. It never gets better. And I never drank normally. Like I said, I knew I was a drug addict because I was addicted physically.
Yeah.
I was never physically addicted to alcohol, but I fucking drank for the effect. I didn't drink, let me have a beer. Let me have 1 glass of wine. That didn't never 1 glass of wine. Fucking 2 bottles of wine. I'll have a beer after practice. No, I won't. I'll have fucking 10. And then it's like, when do you stop? And people are normal. They don't understand that. Just be a mature person and, have your 1 beer and go home. Fuck, people don't get it. You have to live that. That has to be in you to know what that feels like. People who are normal, one, they know what they know, but they're ignorant of what an addict or an alcoholic goes through.
Yeah.
They're really ignorant of it because they can only see it one way. They see it as a moral failing as opposed to a physical and mental feeling. It's a threefold disease, and that it physical, spiritual, mental disease, and they don't. Those people don't get it, and not that I worry much time thinking about that, but it's funny sometimes I hear people speak about people who got fucked up in their lives. I get a kick out of it because really there's not many people out there that this has not affected, this disease of alcoholism or addiction.
Yeah, no, and a couple more things and I'll let you get on with your life.
Whatever you got.
All right. One of the things I got to ask you about, and we'll close off with some addiction stuff and some later stuff. Your ex-wife, Whitey Bulger, was her stepdad?
Yeah.
And what the hell was that like? I mean, you've got this life that's so interesting. Like you're just falling ass backwards into people like this. I mean, what was that like? I mean, he was a complicated dude. Obviously, you didn't have a bad experience with him.
No, I get along great with him. Listen, I didn't hang around with him all the time. I certainly been out with him on quite a few occasions here in Montreal. I talked to him on a lot of occasions. You know.
How about the story of the first time you met him? When he takes tell me that story.
You know, I remember going to the house and Karen kept telling me, you know, you don't know him. He's, you know, fucking crazy and whatever. Fuck. You know, I knew of him. Of course, I knew who he was, but it was a whole different thing. She said that there's never been like Karen had two sisters. One was younger and her brother Billy. But she said there's never been another male and man in that house, you know. So she brings me home. We're going to go out. And we're ready to leave. And he said, Chris, I want to talk to you for a minute. Karen, wait in the car. So she went out in the car. And, you know, no, sorry. We both sat down, me and Karen. And he had a gun on his lap. And he said, listen, Chris, here's the deal. I know you two like each other. I just always respect her and treat her like a lady and never lay a hand on her and, you know, be polite. Because if you don't, there's going to be a problem. And I said, okay, you don't have to worry about that. And I said, actually, you didn't have to pull a gun out to tell me that. He said, well, that's the way I do business. I said, okay. And I think he was impressed with that, to be honest with you. The sense that I wasn't like, oh my God, he fucking got a gun. What's he going to do? I mean, I'm going on the first day. He ain't going to fucking shoot me yet. I knew I was getting out of there, you know, unless I sucker punched him. But, and then we went out in the car and Karen got in the car and we were right in front of the house and he opened the door and stuck his head out as I was getting in. I had let her in the, you know, passenger door, and then I come around and the door opened again. He said, hey, Chris, come here. I'm like, fuck. So I said, what's he fucking want now? And I went and sat down again. He said, here, I know you two. I know you're going to school and playing hockey and all this. You're working part-time, but here's some money. And he peeled off, I think it was Gino cash, and said, have a good night. And we went to Cafe Budapest in Boston, a place he used to go. Went and saw the lady in white who ran the place. She's from Hungary. Awesome restaurant. And yeah, so that's how that started. But he did his thing, whatever he did. Again, and you know, it's funny. I've heard people talk about how the fuck could he ever talk to him and be. People don't have a fucking clue. Yeah. People are so fucking foolish. Like
until you're in somebody's shoes.
I minded my fucking business. I didn't marry him. I married Karen. And Karen's mother was just a really good person. And anyway, so yeah, that whole part of my life, and you know, like I said, I never had a problem with him. He used to come up here to get away, and he'd come and watch hockey games, and he'd see that, you know, Colleen, my daughter, and when Chris was born and stuff. So yeah, I mean, he was in a different fucking line of business.
It's just a wild interaction. Life is crazy. So two more things. What do you tell somebody that is struggling with addiction, that just can't, you know, and they feel hopeless?
Well, you know, I try and convey the message that, you know, one, you never lose hope. You can never lose hope. Two, the way you feel right now, if I'm sitting with someone, and I was 3 weeks ago sitting with someone, and I said to that someone, and that someone was in fucking tears, crying like a baby, shame, guilt, all of it. And I just let him spew. And I said, you know what, JP? I said, you never, the way you feel right now, you never have to feel that way again. but you have to do something about it. And I said, there's help offered to you at a very reputable treatment center in California. I think the best thing for you to do is get on that fucking plane Wednesday and show up and take care of this thing and learn how to live your life one day at a time without alcohol. You'd be surprised. You can be happy. And the quicker you get the one day at a time thing, and I'll tell you, the one thing I struggle with, I can never drink again the rest of my life. I'll never have fun. It couldn't be further from the fucking truth.
Yeah.
And JP's in treatment right now. So yeah, those are things, you know, because a lot of times when you speak with people, they are at such a fucking low point and they feel so bad. If you can get that message across to them that, you know, the way you feel right now, you really don't ever, because someone did that to me.
Yeah.
You never have to feel like this again if you don't want to. If you really want to feel like that, then you can stay like that. But there's a way out. I remember I was told that, and fuck it caught my attention.
Does the NHL take advantage of a guy like you? Do they?
No.
No? Why not?
No.
Why, I mean, the fuck?
Listen, you know, they have a program, the behavioral health program, where, and I know the people involved, Dr. Lewis, Dan Cronin, Dr. Shaw no longer. And they are adamant about anybody who comes to work in that environment has to be have the credentials.
Yeah, you got the credentials. Yeah.
When I first got sober, I did the class in UMass Boston and was doing all that, and I took the test to get my KDAC, and I missed by 2 points, and I never took it again. I relapsed instead. So I could have had the KDAC and had it done, but I never went back. So it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah, but you would just think the way that we network in recovery, they would say, hey, if a guy's struggling, say, hey, give Chris Nilan a call. I you know, whatever.
Well, even you know, they, like, I don't know what they do, and I'm real good friends with Dan, but I've never understood why when they have these rookie trainings and the camp in the summer, all these young kids are coming in, that they don't have them in one night and have them hear the fucking story of someone like me.
Yeah.
You know, a former player who struggled with what he struggled with, and it can fucking happen to you. So, and believe me, I know if I talk to a bunch of young fucking kids and I tell my story, they're going to be fucking gripping their seats.
Oh yeah, they'll be paying attention.
You know what I mean? I would love to do it.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, they've never tapped into me, so that's life. I'll go where I'm called to go.
Well,
you know.
And so you got the podcast, and like, where can people find you? You're easy to find on Instagram. You're on social media. You're awesome like that. But what's the podcast called? Where can people hear it?
It's called Raw Knuckles Podcast. You can get it on YouTube, Podbeam, iTunes, all of it. You know, it's a little more hockey centric.
Yeah.
I'd love to expand to talk about some other stuff like world events, current events, all those things going on in the world today. But, you know, I'd have to go down a whole different avenue. I had kind of had a ready-made audience here because of the radio.
Yeah.
So I tapped into that. And listen, I like talking to ex-athletes, current guys. I enjoy that. It's fun. And I'm not saying there's no substance in that.
Oh, there is. It's fun.
I really love to talk about world events and what's going on in the world. I've been doing some things with Patrick McEnroe, the tennis player.
Oh, yeah.
And Patrick and I certainly different on the political spectrum, opposite poles. And we get along. So we're talking about maybe doing some things together, but we'll see how that goes. I'm sure you keep an eye out, you'll see if that happens or not. But we've been talking. But yeah, the podcast, I have my website, knucklesisland.com. We got the Knuckles brand, gear, hoodies, hats, Knuckles Go Bra, Knuckles Forever. We come up with that one for St. Patrick's Day. So yeah, and Jamie, helps me take care of all she helps produce the podcast. She produces the whole Knuckles brand, all that. We worked hard together. It's funny, when we were moving back here, I told her, listen, here's the plan. I'll get in the radio. We'll get a website going. I'll do some speaking. We'll start doing all this stuff. And she couldn't comprehend it. She just didn't have a clue.
Didn't understand the magnitude of it.
Yeah, and she didn't understand. Not that, I'm fucking Michael Jordan. I'm not.
Yeah.
We come back here and she just had a hard time putting together that, this guy's been retired for fucking 30 years. How is he going to do this? Yeah. And then when she got here and realized how it is here, then, everything we said we were going to do, we did. The two of us, we're going to do this. We're going to work together toward it. And we have. We've worked hard together to build what we have. We went from fucking living in my dentist's condo to renting a place, not one lick of furniture, furnished that place, saved up enough money, ended up buying a house in 2017. We got our own place. Like, we've, had an awesome life together in the time we've been back here. It's been Christ, 13 years now. And, life is good. I had that hiccup back in 2015. I got to tell you that it happened for a reason. And I've never been, honestly, I've never been happier in my life. I just haven't. My kids are healthy, grandkids, 5 grandkids. My youngest one has struggled a little bit, but she's doing okay now. And life is good.
I got to tell you, it's an honor to talk to you.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome to be on with you, for sure. You were a fun interview to do it with, fun podcast, I got to tell you.
Well, Knuckles, thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.